To be is to be perceived. This perhaps is one of the most famous quotations we often encounter when reading George Berkeley, the Irish thinker and writer. Among his many ideas and his philosophical idealism, more precisely subjective idealism, he believed objects exist only as ideas in the minds of perceivers or in the infinite mind of God. Now, I'm not going to discuss what he means by the mind of God or whether to put it this way his theory ever makes sense. What I want to focus on is what it actually means when he say that to be is to be perceived. Does his argument hold any real meaning, or is it merely a kind of circular reasoning, where one supposes something only to negate it later, while the initial supposition itself has no meaning outside the very definition that was given to it in the beginning? Let us begin by briefly discussing his theory, and then we will see what is really happening here. Berkeley himself never gave the example of a tree in the forest, as we often do when discussing his ideas, but I will use it here since it has become a popular way of illustrating his thought. The question before us, discussed in his 1710 work, a treatise concerning the principles of human knowledge, is Berkeley's claim that objects exist only as ideas in the minds of perceivers or in the infinite mind of God. Some related ideas can also be found in his earlier work, An Essay Towards a New Theory of Vision, written just a year before. A very popular example is the one about the tree, where the question is asked, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is near to hear it, does it make a sound? This version never actually appears in Berkeley's work in the exact form, but the earliest known version of the tree example comes from Joseph Glanville, an English philosopher who wrote about it in The Vanity of Dogmatism, or I think it's The Vanity of Dogmatizing, in 1661. Nearly 5 decades before Berkeley. Joseph does not raise this question as a metaphysical claim, but rather as a skeptical one, as both the title and the materials included in this book suggests us and what we are inclined to believe. Apart from this, for Berkeley, material substance does not exist independently of perception. Everything exists only insofar as it is perceived by minds, whether human or divine. The point I want to raise here is not whether Berkeley's theory should be rejected, nor what difference it makes when he says that everything exists because God is perceiving it, more towards a move that seems to push the idea of subjectivism outward merely to sustain the theory. Rather, what I want to focus on here is the phrase, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Now, whether or not it was ever said exactly by Berkeley or merely associated with his ideas, the phrase itself seems to contain a contradiction. The problem lies within the statement where it first affirms with certainty that something is falling and then removes all the sources of perception. This makes us feel that in order to know the sound, there must first be the existence of someone or something to perceive it, or otherwise there is no sound at all. But then consider the part of the phrase that says, if a tree falls. How are we even able to say this? To assert that a tree is falling already requires someone to perceive or conceive it by the same logic that the second part of the phrase denies when it says no one is near to hear it. To look from a distance, the problem becomes rhetorical if viewed in a Derridian way. In Berkeley's idea, a table in a room continues to exist even when no one is watching it because God is always perceiving it. Based on this, thinkers have raised question, suppose we place a rose on the table and then leave the room. According to Berkeley, the rose on the table still exist as they are because even if no one is watching, God is. However, our own perception changes the situation. When you first see the table without the rose and later return to find it with the rows, these are two separate perceptions. The structure of existence then may not be fixed only in God's perception. It also shifts when we interfere or move away. So basically, this leads to a conclusion. The first perception, that is the table without the rows, and the second perception, that is the table with the rows, are two independent perceptions that even God might hold separately. Therefore, the being of something changes not only as part of perception, but also as part of existence itself. Such are the ideas that our past thinkers have also explored, and I simply wanted to revisit the question posed by Joseph Glanville. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, whose thought is often used to elaborate Berkeley's metaphysics. I hope I have understood it correctly by including Joseph's approach, and I also hope my words were clear. Thank you so much for watching.